Hello, hello, welcome back to Supposedly Fun. I am Greg and I'm a day late because I want to do a video about the best and worst fathers in literature, and Father's Day was yesterday. So I fail at life, I'm sorry, but I am here and I'm going to do it. You may remember back in May I did the best and worst mothers in literature, so it's only fair that the dads get their turn. So let's do this, let's dive right in. Starting with the best, this one is going to come as absolutely no surprise to anybody because you cannot talk about the best fathers in literature without talking about Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird. This is a no-brainer. He is patient, he's understanding, he's kind, but he never stops challenging his kids to be better, whether that involves helping people who otherwise can't afford it, treating people with respect, or just looking beyond the surface to try to truly understand another human being. Best of all, he leads by example. Not only does this make him a great father, it also makes him a great role model for the entire town where they live. So, absolutely, Atticus Finch. Next, let's talk about Bob Cratchit from A Christmas Carol. So Cratchit and his family are a somewhat cartoonish representation of all that's good and pure in the world. But admit it, you would love to live in a family this wholesome, wouldn't you? Next, let's talk about Hans Huberman from The Book Thief. Now, he may not be Liesel's biological father, but Hans's quiet, gentle nature and his insistence on education makes him more than worthy of a spot on this list. He is also moral, he's willing to stand up for what's right, and he is very protective of his young charge, even as he wants her to stand up for herself in a time when it's very difficult to do so. Now, I have not read Victor Hugo's book, Les Miserables, which means it should be off limits for this list because I'm trying to only include things that I've read. However, I have seen the musical many times, and I've seen several different film adaptations, so I feel like I'm justified in putting Jean Valjean on this list. Now, Jean Valjean is not a perfect man, but he spends his whole life trying to do better, and he is fiercely protective of Cosette, who is not his biological daughter, but he takes in and raises as his own. And while initially that translates to him being wildly overprotective of Cosette, over time he manages to save the life of the man she loves and gives them his blessing in the end. He's a great father. You can't deny that. Now let's talk about some people who are in a kind of father limbo. They're not really good, but they're not really bad. Some of these are going to surprise you because I looked online to make sure I wasn't missing anybody, and some of these figures appear on best of lists, but I disagree. First, let's talk about Mr. Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. Now, unlike Atticus Finch, Mr. Bennet can be alternately indulgent and remote, mostly remote. He adores his eldest daughters, Elizabeth and Jane, but he is basically checked out of the lives of his youngest and flightiest daughters. Basically, he's good with a witty retort, but that's about it. That's all you're going to get from him. He does stand up for his daughters when it matters to them because he wants them to be happy, but I don't think you can call him the best when he is so firmly checked out of their lives. And if you disagree, leave me a comment down below. Next is another one that I think a lot of people are going to disagree about, and it comes from the Harry Potter series. It's Arthur Weasley. Now, unlike Atticus Finch, Arthur Weasley does not lead by example, and I think that's one of the reasons that you can't really call him one of the best fathers. Not only does he not lead by example, but his bad habits, like enchanting Muggle artifacts, which is illegal, even though that's literally his job to prevent that, his bad habits actively encourage bad behavior in his children, which leaves Molly Weasley, who was one of my best mothers in literature, to pick up more than her fair share of the slack when it comes to raising their kids to be productive members of society. Now, yes, he is supportive, he's loyal, he's brave, he takes Harry in as one of his own. So there are a lot of things that make Arthur Weasley a great father, but I just think he leaves way too much of the actual raising to Molly, and I really don't like the way he encourages some of the more negative behaviors of his children. And guess what? For the next one, we're going back to the Harry Potter series, because we got to talk about Sirius Black. Now, Sirius is devoted to his godson Harry when they meet again in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. But there's no denying that he's something of a bad influence as well, kind of like Arthur. But Sirius is reckless, he's temperamental. If he likes you, he'll be loyal to you to the end. You just better hope he likes you, because if he doesn't like you, it's going to be a problematic, fraught relationship. And again, if you disagree with me about these, leave me a comment down below. Now let's get into the worst. And just like Atticus Finch seemed obvious for the best fathers, I don't think anyone is going to be surprised that we have to talk about Humbert Humbert from Lolita in the worst fathers. I mean, it should be obvious why. If not, Humbert Humbert marries a woman to get closer to Lolita, who is wildly underage. So he becomes her stepfather, but he's really just trying to get with her. It's all very Woody Allen. It's all very gross. It's a great book, but there's no denying he is absolutely one of the worst fathers ever in literature. And then there's King Lear from Shakespeare's play, King Lear. To be fair, Lear spends Shakespeare's entire play learning the folly of his ways, but there's no denying that having his daughters compete to show their love in order to earn an inheritance from him was an excessively vain plan that was probably destined to bring about his own ruin. And then we go back to Matilda, which should be a familiar book from the video about mothers. Now we got to talk about Mr. Wormwood. Now, like his wife, Mr. Wormwood is inattentive on his best day and cruel on his worst day. Matilda deserved so much better, and thankfully by the end of the book, she finds so much better. So there you go. And then finally, among the worst fathers in literature, I don't think we can ignore Jack Torrance from The Shining. And kind of like Humbert Humbert, it probably should be obvious why he's on this list. If it's not obvious, Jack Torrance is an alcoholic depressive before he and his family arrive at the Overlook Hotel, where they will be caretakers for the winter. But as they settle in the Overlook Hotel and some kind of mysterious shenanigans start happening, Jack Torrance ultimately tries to kill his family with a croquet mallet. Yes, in the book it is a croquet mallet, in the movie it is changed to an axe, but point stands, awful father. Now really quickly I want to include some dishonorable mentions because I have not read anything by Pat Conroy, so I can't really include him, but it sounds like from his books there are a bunch of examples that could be the worst fathers. The one I'm going to mention right now and single out to you is the Great Santini, who is a strict military man who refuses to accept his sensitive son. And also, I've seen a lot online about the father in the book Bastard Out of Carolina. He is supposed to be absolutely horrible, and from the descriptions I saw, he is horrible, but I haven't read the book, so I can't include it on the list. So, that's what I have. If you have any best, worst, or limbo fathers that you would like to include, leave them in a comment below, and we can talk about it. Somebody rightly pointed out a really good one from the last video. They pointed out that I didn't include Lily Potter, and gosh darn it, I forgot James Potter in this one again. So I just corrected that in real time. James Potter, let's include him in the best. He literally died for his son. But anyway, if you have other suggestions, leave them down below, and I would love to hear what you think. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I will be back again. Until then, happy reading, everybody.